Learn how to set up Visual Studio Code. Hey everybody, today we are going to learn how to set up Visual Studio Code to work with Unity. I use Visual Studio Code as my code editor when I'm using Unity, and so I thought I would show you guys how to get Visual Studio Code set up so you get the best experience using that with Unity. So I'm going to assume that you already have Unity and Visual Studio Code installed. I want to start with some stuff inside Visual Studio Code. So we're going to go down to this bottom button down here on the sidebar, and that's the extensions. And there are two extensions that I think are really, really useful to use in Visual Studio Code when you're using Unity. The first one is the debugger for Unity. If you search for that, debugger Unity, it'll show up. It's made by Unity. The other is Unity Tools. And if you just search for Unity or Unity Tools, you will see that guy, and go ahead and install each of those. Now, once we've got these two extensions installed, let's actually tell Unity to start using Visual Studio Code as our code editor. So if we go to Unity and then go to Edit and then Preferences, underneath the external tools, we have the option of changing which external script editor we want to use. I don't think that Visual Studio Code is there by default. Even if it's installed, it wasn't for me at least. Now, before we can tell Unity to find Visual Studio Code, we actually need to make the hidden items on our computer visible. And so open up an Explorer window, hit the folder there, and then we need to go to the View button at the top and make sure that hidden items are visible, because Visual Studio Code by default installs in a hidden folder, and so we need to make that visible. So inside Unity, we can then go to Browse, and if you go to your root folder there of your user there, you can get to that by clicking the first arrow and then choosing your name there, or your username, and then you're going to look for a folder called App Data, and then you're going to go into one called Local, and then Programs, which is here somewhere, Programs, and then Visual Studio Code, and you're going to look for the program called code.exe and hit open, and I've already done that, so I'm not going to do that. And now when I open scripts inside Unity, it will open it up inside Visual Studio Code. Awesome. Now let's quickly learn how to use the two extensions that we installed inside Visual Studio Code. Let's look at Unity Tools first. There are two big things that that extension allows us to do that I use a lot. So the first one is if I've got a method or a property selected, and it's a built-in method or property inside Unity, I can hit Control and then hit my apostrophe button, and it's going to search the Unity documentation for that. And so I can, I clicked on rotate, and so now I can find all of the different things that, different methods that use rotate. Also, if I know that something exists, but it's not necessarily used in my script, I can hold down Control-Shift apostrophe, and then I can, for example, if I wanted to get to the documentation about rigid bodies, I can do that, and it's going to search the Unity documentation quickly that way. So that's just a really handy way to get access to the documentation, and that's via the Unity Tools extension. Now let's learn how to use the debugger inside Visual Studio Code with projects inside Unity. So let's learn how to attach them first. And so I've got like a starter scene here. There's literally nothing going on. Okay, not literally nothing, but next to nothing. So let's make it crazy simple. Let's add a script to the camera. Let's call it camera. Make it a new script called camera. And so I've already got Unity told to use Visual Studio Code as my editor. So if I double click this, Visual Studio Code should open up. So here's my script right here, but it's not attached to Unity. If I go to the debug window, it currently says no configurations, and so I need to attach it to Unity or tell to use Unity. So I can hit the gear icon right here, and I'm going to choose Unity Debugger. And now it's going to create a new file called launch.json, and now I can actually choose Unity as the debugger. So if I hit play, and I've got my standard debugging controls up here. I can pause, or I can step over or step into different parts of the code. I can go to Unity, and if I actually play my game, and then maybe make a breakpoint on the update method, and it just hit that breakpoint, now I can actually see the details of my camera over here in the variables. So I've just set up a quick script to give my camera some gerbils and then update my gerbils every frame of the game. And so let's go ahead and debug this real quick. I'm going to show you guys something. So let's play this. And it's playing. Now let's go ahead and set a breakpoint right there. So now when it hits that, we can actually hover over it and we can actually see details about the variables and the properties inside our scripts themselves just by hovering over different things. And so that's another pretty cool thing about Visual Studio Code on the debugging side of things. So that's how to get Visual Studio Code up and running with Unity. Hopefully this made some sense. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.
这张 PPT 里面我们给出了人工智能、机器学习以及深度学习之间的关系。那人工智能呢，是一个最大的范畴。
Hey guys, so I wanted to show that because I want to show a couple of things. These are other editors, one for your coding and the code behind, and another one for the game engine itself. So what we just saw is Unreal. I know some people asked in the chat, what is Unreal and all those things. Unreal is another engine like Unity. It is very similar to Unity, and usually game developers will choose one or the other as their foundation. Now, there's other engines out there. There's lots of other engines out there, but these are the top two widely used engines, and usually you're in a camp of Unreal or Unity. Yes, that is correct. You can use an Unreal. It's not that it uses a different language necessarily. It is that it's just a different tool set. So if I wanted to script, I can still script in either way. Benefits, I don't use it, so I can't tell you the benefits. I know that it visually looks different, but from what I hear, my estimation, people are just on one camp or the other. There's not really a why use one or the other. For my purposes, we're using Unity because I know Unity, but
it's kind of like iPhone, Samsung, Xbox, PS4, and like Windows and Mac, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, basically. But just putting it out there that there's this other editor out there that you might hear about quite a bit. So there you go. All right, well, we're going to continue where we left off, and I have a hard stop at 3 today, unfortunately. That's the reason why I want to show you these things now. And then tomorrow, I'm going to start showing a little bit more of Blender, because we're going to jump into Blender next week. And that'll give you the core foundation of game development. Now, like we showed in that first video, there's hundreds upon hundreds of items and packages that Unity supports as far as their Unity engine goes. So when you're building something, it is very possible that you won't know what it is or how it is you're going to do something. The best way to figure it out usually is to Google it, or follow other people that are pretty advanced and they do this stuff regularly. I'm often coming up with issues where I'm just like, man, how do I do that? And the truth is the answer is usually on the internet, usually. Most of the time, my issues are now related to like machine learning and trying to make the game more performant, better for you, because there's nothing worse than creating a game or playing a game just to find out that it's nearly impossible to finish, or it's too easy and you finished it with no problem. So I like to make my games progressively more difficult and take advantage of how people have started to use the game in production. So what I mean by that is, if you ever played a game where people have figured out how you can just kind of swarm a player at the start, and it just becomes a terrible experience for a person trying to come in and start the game. I like to put obstacles in there and keep people from actually just swarming at the very beginning, so the game time actually goes on a little bit longer. Because in the end, long-term strategy might be more interesting. Yeah. I've been part of a bunch of games. Somebody asked me if I made games. I've been part of a bunch. Not my game experience is all you're going to be on a team. You're not ever going to be by yourself. It's not off topic at all, by the way. You should ask, hey, does the person that's teaching you do the job that they're teaching? And the answer is yes. And as we go on later on, I can show you some of the stuff that I did.
Are there any like mainstream games you helped with, or just like smaller games?
I typically have done smaller games because my game development was really early in my career. Now, as you guys know, those of you that are in my robotics class know that I primarily am in robotics now. So gaming took a really backseat to robotics. They're very similar. And as a matter of fact, I use Blender and C# in robotics, so that there's really no difference there. All right. Oh, so we're going to continue on today. I'm gonna blast through this a little faster, and it's because yesterday was kind of the hardest day. So you got through yesterday. Kudos to you. But we're gonna click on the tutorial if you want to follow along with me, and if you're signed in on the tutorial, then you can definitely easily follow me through what we're doing right now. All right, let me get one thing open here. You guys don't need to see that. Yeah, these days, the kind of stuff I make that's public is not so interesting. Or like I'm working on a project for Pete's Coffee right now. Totally not interesting, but it is related to how many people are going into stores and the distance between them in stores and stuff like that, COVID related stuff. And using the camera and machine learning and vision, stuff like that. Your coffee maker? No, coffee maker is, Pete's is they make all kinds of coffee related products, and they also have stores around the country and around the world. I also work for Starbucks, done work for Gap, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Cisco Systems, lots of places. It's taken me around the world, so I've gotten to travel quite a bit doing this, and I also teach and talk around the world as well. AWS, do some work for AWS. All right, so that's my history. And since we gotten into that for a few seconds, today we're back in that same kind of place we were in before, when we were looking at just a couple of updates to the C++ code that we wrote. And remember, we talked about what's a class and all of those kind of things. I'm not going to dive back into that, but I do want to gauge that whether you understood what happened there or not. I really would like to know that. It's a couple of people. One person says kinda. So it is a little difficult. So I just want to make sure that if you are having some issues, just make sure to reach out to me and get those solved. Why? Because it's going to be real tough if we like get past this and you're not there with us. All right. Okay, so where we left off, I'm going to stop monitoring the chat for a few seconds because it's in the way of my other screen. But where we left off is we were talking through classes. We talked about basically how to create a class. So we did all that. Everybody remember that? And so today we're going to kind of continue through this same kind of progress, where we also talked about functions, and we also talked about where you can find your classes that you're already using. So when you're importing a class, where it's coming from. Okay. Somebody tell me, and come off mute, tell me what a function is.
A function is something that like it's there and it never really changes. It kind of tells what like the scene or whatever you're doing is supposed to do, kind of.
Perfect. That sounds right. And so we added new functions, if you recall. So if you go to I think it was Money Spawner, we added this new function called Spawner Sample, and now it's going to spawn money. Now and we also talked about, we didn't use this term, but I'm just gonna give you the term so you have it down. Oh, I have another project open as well. Let me get rid of that. You guys don't need to see that. I'm doing if you ever heard of the artist Lecrae, I'm doing some work for Lecrae as well. Probably you guys would not have heard of Lecrae. Okay, so here we are, back where we were before. We got the spawner sample. We got this other class. Remember, we made a new class, and we have this other new functions inside that class, and all their functions are public, so they can be used by the entirety of the program.
Oh, I just looked it up, and is he a hip hop artist?
Yes, he's a hip hop gospel artist, so he's like a Christian artist. If you are into Steph Curry plays his songs during warm-ups all the time, and they're like best friends. So that's the kind of cool side note about that. And if you guys want to know any more side notes, I have plenty of them, like met Michael Jordan, a bunch of other NBA players plenty of times.
Ooh, I like NBA.
All right, but let's stay focused on game development for a little bit. All right. But that's if we ever have free time, I'll give you some updates about the stuff that I do. And again, a lot of this is because I have been an engineer for so long that people have asked me to do a lot of different projects. All right, so we now are going to spawn that new object. So what we did is, if we go back here, and we said that we want the object to spawn somewhere over there, and let's see where we are right now. So there's some health potions, there's some money. Just says money. There's not a object there, but there's money there. Awesome. So that's exactly what we wanted to happen. We wanted to spawn some money, and we did it. Okay, and then we now are using that prefab for money. So pretty soon we should add actually something that you can actually see, so it just doesn't just say money. All right, and I think we talked about looking up packages, or how to look up packages. So like when we were looking at what is MonoBehavior, what does that mean? I think we did get through that and talk through how to see where that stuff is. But just for an updated note, here it is. This is a way to look through all of your documents. If you're open this up in Visual Studio and you're using one of the projects that's Unity related, you can just see all of these documentation in that project. And I'll show you how to do that as we get along here. All right. Believe it or not, we have gotten to the end of the hardest part of classes. And I want to talk about briefly something called inheritance. And I'm not monitoring the chat, so someone said yes. Well, to be honest, that is what where you're going to spend a lot of your time. Like the game development, while it's very cool, it really happens here. Like the majority of you creating the functions, and then you can reuse them in your game. But you have to create the function somewhere. It's not going to like create itself. So you will spend a lot of time here. I know it sounds not fun, but to be honest, after a while, once you know what's going on in here, it is fun, because you spend most of your time just developing variables and using them in functions, and then you just create classes for those to house all those things in. Now we're going to briefly talk about, and we talked about this, but we didn't say what this was. When you have this class, and then you pass something into it, and it gives you other details based upon what you passed into it. That is called a constructor. And it means basically to put together. So let's say I was building a class called person, and I wanted to have some things be known about that person at the very beginning, and say I call that person Bob. I want Bob to be of class person. What I would do is I would create the class, and then I would create a constructor, which is basically to use to add an entry point to the class, just like this. This is a constructor. And from there, what's always going to happen is if I pass in something to this person's name, then it will let you add parameters to that person. So you guys need me to explain that, or further? I can write some code to show you what I mean. But it's here, it's right here. So this is a loot angle. So if I pass in a number to loot angle, then it will create some loot at the distance and angle that we want to create that loot. So this is the function we created the other day. Right. You will need to know this stuff. So if I'm going over too fast, make sure to find me and make sure we get that solved. So back to this MonoBehavior thing. We looked up MonoBehavior. We figured out what it meant, but there's other things just like this. So when you do this kind of colon notation on a class, it means it inherits this other class. And we talked about that. So, we said that dog is of class animal. And it's just like a hierarchy. This is the parent, this is the child. Okay? So I'm going to call that complete. I'm not going to, dive into it any further. But if you have any problems with that, let me know. So if we look back, am I sharing? I am, right? Yeah. Okay. If we look back at MonoBehavior, then you can see all the areas where MonoBehavior is been called. One match. Oh, that's because did that. Okay. Then you can see everywhere that what a MonoBehavior is. So looking at this list, I think you can now figure out what is the kind of stuff that's in MonoBehavior. These are all the things that is in there. I don't expect you to know this. It doesn't make sense for you to know this, but just know that when I am creating objects, I typically am using a class like this because it has all of the, there's a question? And the actions are subclasses. So the actions, so the functions inside of MonoBehavior. So like, let's take a look at one of these, like stop coroutine. This is a function inside of MonoBehavior. If you look at how, and this is going to be another hard little thing for you to think about, but when I put this MonoBehavior inside of my class and I inherit from it, I get all of its functions, all of its variables that are public, every function that's public, every variable that's public. So this is an example. They're showing an example of using MonoBehavior here. So if I wanted to start, say, coroutine, which is basically starting a routine, then I'm going to call MonoBehavior do that, right? Okay, so it gives an example of how to use this function and also what the function is. So, so this function, in this case, stop coroutine, stops a routine that's running. So let's say my routine that's running is sending enemy waves. I can stop that routine using this in code. And you may want to do that for various reasons, like users create or achieve the goal, then you'd want to stop. Cool. So you call a function from is a class. Yes, that's right. And the actions are yeah, let's call it function. Yeah. From a class by class.function. How would you call a subclass? So when you're referencing class, so this is a class, spawner sample, MonoBehavior is a class. If I am subclassing, meaning you're making use of a class and turning it into your own thing, then you just create an instance of that and use it. So there's not like there's no magic to that, if you understand what I'm saying. So it'd be something like this. If I said, class dog, I'm doing this in chat, by the way. Need to call it after defining it. You wouldn't need to call it after defining it. You would if it's a class, because your class, you're creating instances. If you're using parameters in that class that are immutable, in other words, ones that aren't variable, then you can use those directly. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, but we can sidebar and talk about it. Okay. So let's keep going, and just to get through this, because we're halfway through and haven't written a line of code. So the next thing that's going on, we talked about, is you inherit from a parent class, and we talked about what kind of stuff is in MonoBehavior. I suggest you look through at least this one class, because you'll be calling this one quite a bit, right? And then just know what some of the things that you could do inside this class, and there's no magic to this. You just have to learn the hard way on this. So what I would say is, as you're starting to write a game, you'll learn more because you'll not know it, if that makes any sense. So like say I want on mouse down, I want a particle trigger, right? This right here. You wouldn't know that if you've never done it before. And there's nothing I can do to show you all of them, because obviously there's many, right? I mean, just look at this list. This is just for MonoBehavior, all the different things that you can do. So it'd be impossible for me to actually teach like that. But what I can do is show you where things are. Okay. Let's see. So let's do one more thing related to this. So we're gonna create a new script. We haven't done that yet, so we're gonna create a new one. So we've been using this same kind of script over and over and over again. And that's not really what we do. We create bunches of different scripts, so you don't end up with like one long giant page. All right, so yep, question?
This is kind of a random question, but about how many lines of code does it take, like, to write a really good game, such as like the mainstream ones like CSGO or stuff like that?
Oh, wow. How many lines of code? You can go onto GitHub and look up some games that are publicly available. They might be older now, and see how many lines of code those are. And it depends. And don't let lines of code deter you or make you think that the game is really complicated. Sometimes it's just that the game developers didn't have the technology at the time to do things that we can do in one line of code today. Like, for instance, if I want to use a machine learning model, 3 years ago, it would have taken me, I don't know, 15,000 lines of code total, maybe guessing, 3 or 4 years ago. Now it takes me like 4 lines of code. So it doesn't, you can't go by that as a metric, but you should. I mean, look at this. Like all we did was create a couple of potions and some money, and it took up a whole page of code, right? All right. So just imagine what if you were going to build a game, and if you're thinking about the game you're going to build, that's why I say start simple. All the times that your game interacts with objects. So in other words, every time it's talking, you don't need good graphics. Every time your game characters are talking to each other, or interacting, or shooting, or whatever it might be, grabbing things, that all needs to be coded. And you might be able to reuse the code, like we saw with the what we call the prefabs. You might be able to reuse those for sure. But everything that happens in the game is going to be something that you don't want to be completely random. So let's say you had a game where your character had to run around talking to different people and then getting missions from those people. Well, every time they talk to the other person, that is something that needs to be coded. Awesome. Just so you know, it's not, this is time intensive. And when I show you game developers building scenes, I'm not showing you the code behind. I think we'll, yeah. And yes, you can also buy into systems that allow you to build a lot faster, but it's still, the quality of your game is going to be based on how much the work you put in, right? If it's just like everybody else's game, yeah. There's some games that are just physics based, and they actually are just little bits of code, because every object you're interacting with, like somebody made this kind of game where the ball bounces off of objects. Well, every time it collides, and they call it a collider, every time, or hitbox, whenever that happens, then you just calculate the next position. All right, so we said enough, and we're kind of behind, so I'm just going to fast forward. So here I want to create another effect, and you can see here these are the kind of effects that are available to us right away: item effect, weapon effect, equipment effect, and interactable object. So we're going to start with an item effect. And it popped up in my other window, so I'm going to bring it back so you can see here. And so I'm going to name my effect first thing, right? And I think we're going to name this add health effects. We're going to stick with the tutorial. Click on create. There we go. So now I have a new script, and it went down into my list of scripts. I have this item effect, add health effect. So if you're looking for it, where it's at, there it is. Yep. Yeah, this is not Scratch. There's a reason why there's a difference between like Unity and Unreal and developers and other kind of developers, because this is much harder, but you can do a lot more. So again, here is my code. There it is, right? Now, for me to edit my code, I just, mobile games are easy to develop. I double click, and now I'm looking at this new code, right? And it gave me, I inherited usable item usage effect, right? I can inherit all of usable item, but then this will just be gigantic for no reason. But I'm inheriting usage effect. And it's given me a default function. and that's typical. This actually is helping us write our code in Visual Studio. Tells you that you know, the character can use this, and it's going to be more that we're going to do here. But for now, you should just know that. Oh, yeah, this is something new. This keyword. Anybody have any idea what this keyword means?
Oh, so basically, like, if something happens and there's like a master or whatever in the system, the override will basically prevent whatever the other thing is saying. To like, it will prevent that from happening if it has a higher like level of access.
Yes, kind of. You were in my robotics class, so you know a little bit more about this. So yes, so override will basically say, instead of using that other one that has the same name, use my version, right? And in some other languages, you use the super keyword, and it gives you back the parent version of this. And then you can override it as you will. Other languages, actually, you can just reuse it without any problems. Okay, so great. So we have this override. So that's new to us. And so now let's just go back to Unity for a second, and we're going to get one of the prefabs again. I'm going to get a potion prefab. Any particular one? Icon potion there. This is a good one. So I'm picking one, but I think you probably want to, if you were following the tutorial, pick the one out of item database, right? And I want the potion prefab. So if I click on the potion prefab, you'll see that it has a name and an effect, and the effect is empty. So you can guess we're going to add an effect, right? And then why don't we just tell some information about this. We're going to say give 10 hit points. Awesome. So now potion description says gives 10 hit points. So cool. And now we're getting into like less about the class declarations and all that mess, and into actually game development. So congratulations to you all for getting to this point. And so we're going to start to get into like, what can this character do, etc. You're still writing code, but we should be a little bit past the stage of what is a class, what is a function, and all that. So let's talk about health or character scores that might lead to the game ending, which is the same thing as the health. In most of the games you play, your characters run around, they get hit by stuff, or they fall and they die, etc. That's what I'm talking about. So what we do is we want to create a function that can add to the character's health when you eat that potion or drink the potion or whatever it might be. So if we went back to that script that we were in, what we want to end up doing, so we look at, here's our usable item. Oh, this is not our usable item. Take that back. Where'd it go? Item, weapon. Oh, wrong. Oh, this is my script. Sorry. If we look back here, what we want to do is change the health positively when they take this potion. I'm going to change it plus 10. Way to go about that. I know it, but I'm also cheating because I'm reading the tutorial. But the way to go about that is change the stats of the user and change health. Simple. And we want to just say it happened. Return true. So we were able to use this. Now you can have some things called conditionals, and we definitely will get into what a conditional is, where you said like change the health, but if if another condition exists, then don't do that. Can you use users stats health plus equals 10? Yeah, so plus equals operator wouldn't work here because this is a function. Change health is a function. If it was a variable, then yes, you could do that. Something like that. But this is a function. This actually does some other stuff. I hope I answered that. All right, so this is an integer. You only know that because you need to know what is inside of change health in order to get there. And I'm purposely not opening this up as a project so you can't exactly see that. But normally we have something called IntelliSense to show you the stuff behind this. But I could go, and that's the reason why I'm doing it this way, is I could go into my my Unity documentation and look up change health, and it'll tell me that. Cool. So how do we do that? Their search engine is not working very well. It's in here somewhere. I'll find it in a minute. Let's just keep going, and I'll come back to that. Yes, yes, you can. You can go into health data and change, but then you wouldn't have the change happen via potion. Okay, so there you go. That's the health, changing the health. Yes, there's other ways to change health. I didn't understand your question, but this is the way to do it via code, or one of the ways. And so now we're going to allow you to pass in an amount, a health amount, which there's a lot of things I don't like about what I just wrote, but let me just say that I wasn't paying attention. So there is also like something called syntax, and we're not even there, or code conventions, and we're not there yet either. But let's just say that the tutorial doesn't have good code conventions. All right, so I've created a variable called a change health, and you can guess what it's going to do. It's going to change the health by the amount. So now it's public, so it's available to Unity in that script. So if I go back to Unity, it's updating. So I have now the health amount and the character data there. if I go to the, did we create a potion? Did I skip creating a potion? Spawner, manager, level design. Potion spawner, there we go. Okay. I feel like I skipped something, so I'm gonna look back for a second. Something I was supposed to tell you guys. I guess not. Still looks good, I guess. So we have this potion again, and it's under, was it under particles tutorials, prefab, there it is, here. And it gives 10 hit points. I can put in a health amount here of 10. Health percentage, amount, health percentage. Of 10. That's not spelled correctly. Whatever. Okay, so now if I go to play this, then all these health potions are worth money, health potions. There's a potion, and I go to inventory, and we have a potion. And it gives us 20% more health and 10 hit points. Very cool. All right, I'm going to look at one more thing involving the scripting, and it's just going to be a video, so you don't have to listen to me for a few seconds. There you go.
So you've completed all the tutorials in Unity's Creator Kit, Beginner Code, and customized your very own RPG game. Give yourself a big old pat on the back, because you deserve it. Now that you understand how to identify key information in C# scripts, write simple instructions, understand the role of variables, functions, and classes, and test the impact of your changes on the player experience, why not mosey on over to the Unity website for more projects to help you build your skills at learn.unity.com and continue your adventure in creative coding.
All right, well, give yourself a big giant pat on the back, because that was hard. And I
just did.
What's that?
I just did give myself a pat on the back.
Good. Yeah, that was hard. This is not easy. And the more you start developing, that'll become easier for you. But understanding classes and functions and what you could do within those environments is not easy at all. And then all the syntax, there's a lot more syntax for you to learn, but let's just say that's a good start. When I'm writing code, I'll show you the solution, maybe nothing to do with this project. Let me stop the video real quick.